people who I really feel sorry for at the universities are these STEM scientists who are searching for truth, and they really that's the only place where they can go and pursue questions where the payoff is the economic payoff or technological payoff is 100 years down the line. Who else is going to support it? In the US, it's universities. And for them to be trapped in an institution now, which is, mainly pursuing some other ideological goals which aren't necessarily aligned with the pursuit of truth, I think that's a real tragedy.
Yeah. How bad are, do you know anything about like European universities? I assume China has none of this political correctness stuff, but say like at European universities, I know Europe is obviously left wing by certain measures politically, but it seems like their universities are not as far gone. Do you know anything about that?
My colleagues in Europe, both the UK and in Europe, tell me they have similar problems. It varies from country to country how far along things are. I mean, things were different in the U.S. just 10 years ago. So, they've accelerated quite a bit in the last 10 years. I think when we first spoke, we were discussing exactly what the causes were for that. But it seems like things have accelerated a lot. And there might be some countries in Europe where things are still functioning kind of okay, and they haven't hit that acceleration that we just had. But I think it's hard to resist over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's other like systems you could imagine, like, there are people who've talked about taking the university, just separating the research from the teaching. I mean, the teaching, I think, it gives you all these administrators, and it gives you pressure from students and takes up your time. If you're, one of the best physicists in the world, maybe teaching undergrads is not the best use of your time. So there's a lot of reasons you can just have government funded research. I mean, the NIH, I think, is like this, right? So there is stuff like this. And potentially less subject to the capture by the crazy people who are drawn to the universities. So yeah,
another aspect to this, which again, it's very politically incorrect to say this, but if you're working on trying to build a quantum computer, you're competing against some of the smartest, hardest working researchers around the world, in Beijing or in Munich, Cambridge, all over the world. So you don't have a lot of time to fool around with other stuff. In fact, you have to be famously monomaniacal to succeed as a STEM researcher, right? You have to focus on your little problem and really just crank on it with your team. Now, it seems like some people who are in other subjects, they actually view a part of their job as being activism, as being advancing certain ideological causes, whether in the broader society or at the university, through speaking and writing and organizing. So there's no way that Joe Chemist, who works on membranes, is going to compete with Joe Activist, who's in the Department of Labor Studies. It just doesn't work that way, because the other guy can spend a heck of a lot more time and energy beating you up in campus politics, or actually attacking you and trying to get you fired, and actually could view that as part of his job, his or her job. Because they say, look, I'm here for social justice. The whole reason I'm in the academy is for social justice, and I'm going to fight for social justice. And this membrane chemist, he may be great at doing cell membrane studies, but he has some wrong views about gender, so I'm going to try to get rid of him. So basically, the serious people have to shut up. If they want to get their work done and advance the subject that has been their passion since they were a student, and they've devoted their whole lives to, they basically have to shut up, because they're competing against other equally formidable people at other universities to get the research money, to win the Nobel Prize, et cetera, to get the paper published. And they're not activists. They don't see activism as part of their job. If a physicist goes to a protest on the weekend because they want to support the local labor union or whatever, they view that as, okay, that's time away from my work, away from my job. It's not what I'm here for, but I believe in it, so I'm going to go protest. Fine, no problem. But the problem is we have whole classes of people on the campus who actually view social justice as their main reason for being on campus. And so it's just a different situation.
Well, a lot of these, I mean, that's unavoidable, because a lot of these fields were created through political activism, right?
Yes,
So, like,
exactly.
the African American studies, the Chicano studies departments. I mean, there were protests, and that led to these things. So, of course, if your field is created for political reasons, it's going to be a
Yeah, and
political field.
in a way, I don't even want to. I don't want to judge those people because they can sincerely believe. I might not agree with them, but they might sincerely believe that the number one problem that they can help with in society is this kind of injustice, and they should be teaching it to the undergrads, and they should be agitating every day. And you know, however, one has to at least admit that those are two very different mindsets and types of activities that are happening on campus. Okay, one guy's an astronomer trying to figure out like how do supernovas happen, and the other guy is trying to like get all the sexist astronomers fired. Right, so those are two different, very different activities that professors engage in on campus.
Yeah, I mean, there's a selection thing. So I think that, like, when I was in uh, when I was in grad school, there seemed to be like a U shape of, like, how people did in our program. So, like, some people were just, like, too lazy to do the work, and so those people wouldn't do well, or they'd take forever to finish, or they wouldn't finish. Some people could do interesting and compelling work and remunerative work outside of academia. So they moved on to their dissertation stage, and then they sort of disappeared. In all humility, I put myself in that category. I sort of lost interest at some point. But then the people sort of in the middle who couldn't really do anything outside of the academy, but were smart enough to do the work and go through the motions. I mean, those people stayed in it. And so I think it's selecting for, like, a certain kind of people. And it's not just like ability. It's like, what kind of life do you want? How, like, do you like this sort of playing games of, like, manipulating symbols and then having other people judge your work, and not having any kind of accountability mechanism through going out there and trying to make your way out and build a product or build a business, or whatever. And so, yeah, I think we're at this point, where, at least as the social sciences, I mean, the selection mechanisms are so bad, that I like, I have, like, friend like Eric Kaufman, who works on, like, trying to reform the university. A lot of people try to do this. The University of Austin I just think it's hopeless. You still need the university for STEM. There's, like, some, I just think about reforming from the outside. I know there's some places, I think, like, Tennessee did this, and I think Australia did this, where they fund you if you're going to a STEM project. Like, the government will give you money to study STEM, but not the humanities or social sciences, or they'll give you less money, or something like that. I think we need to start thinking about solutions like that, because I just look at the social sciences and I think, look, you're not going to reform this. It's just the selection mechanisms, the people who are there, the methods, the institutions that have developed. It's gone, and all you can do is sort of think about how to limit the damage and limit their power and their resources and their influence.
When you and I were first talking on my podcast earlier, I said to you, I admired you because you and Zach Goldberg and these other guys had really kind of, in some sense, figured out how wokeism happened. They had a very, I think, compelling narrative for how it happened, and I was saying that I had totally missed it, even though I was in the academy this whole time. How could this wokeism thing have taken over while I was sitting there not noticing? And here's the thing, like, being a kind of like a little bit too autistic physics guy, when the Sokal hoax, are you familiar with the Sokal hoax? Alan Sokal?
Oh, yes, yes,
Maybe
that
before your
was
time, but Alan Sokal was
no, I've read about it. Yeah.
so he's a mathematical physicist, and he noticed that a lot of these postmodernist philosophers and literary theorists had kind of completely abandoned the notion of truth and the scientific method and positivism, all these things that physicists assume naturally. These guys had basically just decided were totally untrue. So he decided to spoof them by writing a completely nonsensical article and getting it published in one of the top literary journals, just to prove that these guys are full of it. It's just complete junk, and we should just ignore them. We should not pay them high salaries, and we should just ignore them. So Sokal pulled off his hoax and totally humiliated. I forgot the name of the journal. It might have been called Social Text, but it was a very big journal at the time. And I just thought, being this crazy physicist, scientist type guy, that, well, Sokal has demonstrated these guys are full of it, so surely administrators and other people will realize that this is all junk and they should not pay attention to these guys. But it didn't happen. What happened is actually those guys kind of took over the university, and all the STEM guys are just quietly taking it.
And yeah, it's true. There was even a more recent hoax. These How in
There was a
Pluckrow.
Sokal there was a sequel to the
Yeah,
Sokal hoax, which was even more extreme, and they published many papers.
yeah.
And
I mean, there's more journals, and the standards have been even lowered. So
yeah,
I'm sure it's probably easier to
yep,
do that today. Yeah. I don't know why you would. It's like a religion, right? Like you think, oh, some scientific finding has like discredited this branch of this faith, right? But that never works like that, right?
yeah.
People
I
just
mean, foolish me to think that you know these other people would pay any attention to what Sokal proved, uncovered. They just completely ignored it.
But do you feel like so like yeah, I mean the way I think your portrayal of sort of university is probably accurate, and you have like these people who are STEM people, science people. They're just interested in finding truth, and they haven't bought into all this other nonsense that goes on. But they don't. It's not like there's the my impression is that the STEM people are. It's not like there's some big backlash, and they're like, oh no, the crazies are running it. I think your view is probably the minority, right? And we have data on this. Again, Kaufman, did a study of professors, including he broke it up into STEM and non-STEM, so people can look that up on the CSPI website.
Yeah,
So this is your view of it, and I think it's probably an accurate view, but the people in STEM and science in the academy don't see it that way,
yes,
right?
the younger the STEM faculty member, the less likely they are to agree with me. And a lot of the younger STEM faculty are themselves super woke and just think this is the right thing. And we need to change the way we teach the math course, or we need to change the way we teach freshman physics, you know, for these reasons. And I think the older that you are among the STEM faculty, the more you're likely to quietly, without trying to get yourself into trouble, agree with what I've been saying. So it's an unfortunate situation. Again, I want to say, I'm not saying there can't be a place at the university for people who are committed to social justice or ideological causes, but we need to articulate that they're not searching for truth in an empirical, positivistic sense, the way that scientists are. They're doing something else. They're convinced they know the truth, and they're trying to shape society, starting with their own institution, in the mold that they want. But it's a different activity than the search for truth.